Hey guys, we have a great interview for you today here on the Golf Podcast. We're going to talk to Bo and Shannon of In the Zone Mental Training. And get this, Mike. I mean, if this doesn't pique your interest, nothing will. In the beta launch of their new training program, their mental game training program, they had 131 golfers. And for every golfer who completed their program in 45 days, right? Every one of them saw at least 5.1 strokes drop.
Sign me up.
It is something. And what they talk about, and that may sound sensational and things like that, but what I would say is hang on to the interview and you'll see why. It is very much grounded in science. And look, as golfers, I do it all the time. You guys probably do it too. How many times do we talk ourselves out of being a good golfer? How many times do we step up to that same tee shot? We know we always put it in the water. And that's what we're thinking. And then what happens? We manifest that. It goes in the water, whatever it may be. Now think about shifting that focus. And imagine instead of focusing on and thinking about how you're always the golfer who misses putts, to start to think about using that to your advantage and build this confidence.
Right.
Now, if you don't think that that's going to be something that creates an ability for you to improve your game and shoot better scores, then what does? So again, as though sensational as it sounds, it's very much founded in science. Both Shannon and Bo have terrific backgrounds grounded in this sport. And Shannon also comes from coaching speed skating at the highest level, the Olympic level, and talks about how you can kind of unlock that. And what they say is in the zone. They say they can help you get there at the flip of a switch. What they do is they look to find in the golfer what can be your trigger, and then you can use that trigger. So it really becomes a situation where you can harness that area of your game. And one thing that I really like that they teach and why we wanted to talk about them here, we're all we don't play golf for a living, most of us. We don't,
Right.
So we're limited on time. So how do you get the practice in? And because we all think when you want to be good at golf, you got to practice. And what they talk about is their way of mental game training is actually almost like putting your body through the physical reps. The detailed visualization that they do allows you to practice. So you could be sitting on your couch at home and putting in real effective golf practice.
There you go, man.
There you go, right?
How can you beat that?
You can't beat that. And so I think, like I said, that's why we want to get them on the show. We're going to bring them on in a minute. We're going to bring them on the show in a minute here. First, want to talk about our sponsors, thank our sponsors this week. Of course, we want to thank Titleist. Everybody wants a faster golf ball, and performance into and around the greens makes a huge difference in what you write on the scorecard. If you watch our videos, you know that. When we're on around the greens, it's a better score, and vice versa. So speed meets performance in the new Titleist Tour Speed. Titleist did extensive testing with amateur golfers in developing the Tour Speed's 3-piece thermoplastic urethane construction. And that's what's going to give you guys that soft feel, but also the exceptional distance that we're all looking for. And that's where we talk about that speed. So you get that distance to long game, that precise short game, really the two things that you have to mix really well in order to play well. And they're all baked right into the Titleist Tour Speed to help set you apart from the competition. So get Tour Speed or get left behind. Pick up a sleeve of the Tour Speed. Check them out. Check them out on Titleist.com. They've done some really great things with this golf ball.
No one wants to get left behind, Frank.
No, they don't.
No, absolutely not. And guys, this episode is also brought to you by ShotScope, the all-in-one GPS and stat tracking watch. Guys, it's still, pre-order. It's sold out now, but they're coming next month. You could pre-order it online. You can go to shotscope.com/Golficity. Just launched in July, the new ShotScope V3. They've done a huge ton of improvements to this thing, making it sleeker, smaller.
That's why it's sold out so quick.
That's why, because they delivered on what everyone wanted.
That's right.
The smaller design, the longer battery life, the colors display, the color bands that are more fashionable, the more precise accuracy on the GPS and on the stat tracking. So you guys asked, they delivered. Get on there. You're going to be rewarded with tons of data about your golf game. It's going to be an amazing...
Over 100 statistics.
Isn't it nuts? It's like opening up the hood of your car and just seeing everything. You can see everything about your golf game right there. Visit shotscope.com/Golficity. Order yourself one now. Pre-order it now. And, of course, the GPS version only. The G3 is still available at a lower price if that's all you're looking for as well. So check them out. And lastly, Frank, want to thank FootJoy. Those guys are great. They're always doing their best to make us look good. And they keep us swinging. And when I say that, they keep us swinging because the seasons change. It gets hot, then it gets cold. We know that it's getting cold now. The rain is coming in, the cold, wet rain, but we don't want to hang the sticks up yet. We try to play as long as possible, guys. So they've introduced the new Hydro Tour jacket. FootJoy has built this thing, storm-proven, built to protect you from the most extreme conditions, using a 3-panel construction to reduce bulk, improve mobility so you could swing through the ball, and maximize water protection. Not to mention, love the way they look and feel. They're pretty cool and 100% waterproof. You can't beat that. So fold it down, stuff it in your golf bag, or wear it when you know the rain is coming during a round. Check it out at footjoy.com.
Yeah, that portability is my favorite part. You're just there, and it's just like,
You
you know
stuff
it's
into
there.
nothing, yeah.
You know, we've played in places like Florida when these storms run through out of nowhere. It rains like a monsoon for 15
Who
minutes.
wants a
and
wet
it's
shirt
not.
for the last 9
That's
holes?
it, man. You throw this thing on, you're good to go.
They know what they're doing, FootJoy.
They certainly do.
They know what they're doing.
All right. Like I said, we've got both Bo and Shannon on the line, so we're not going to keep them waiting any longer. Like I said, exciting program that they've got, and everything we talk about here, the links will be in the show notes or in the video description if you guys want to find out more. But without any further ado here, let's bring Bo and Shannon on the call. All right, guys, we're really excited because we have both Bo Watson and Shannon Shuskey on the line here. And it ties in so well, Mike, to what we talked about on our podcast. Maybe it was 3-4 weeks ago. We talked about the struggle of kind of the mental challenge of staying in your game for a whole round. And we talked about there are different things you can do, like pre-shot routine and things that kind of trigger getting in the zone. But when I heard about the new program that you guys have, Shannon and Bo, this idea of being able to get in the zone at the flip of a switch, obviously that's something that really sparked our interest, because I think that's what every golfer wants. But I'll let you first start. Let's do a little introduction. I mean, we could start with you, Bo. Let's talk a little bit about who you are, and then I want to talk a little about the specifics of what it means to be in the zone and the idea of how you can get there, as you said, in the flip of a switch. So Bo, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm a high-performance golf coach. I been in this journey since I was a kid. Just real short story. I had the dream of playing on the LPGA tour, and had a lot of success in junior golf, got to high school, things plateaued. And the big result of that was actually because I was the worst mental head case there is. I'm not kidding. If there was like a record, I probably was in the top 10 in the world when it came to being my worst enemy on the golf course. So, and it was interesting. I went to go to Kim University. I thought, you know what, I got to keep my dream alive. It cost me a scholarship, so I had to go and make a decision. Do I go to a D3 school, or do I go to Campbell, which had a PGA golf management program? But also the main reason was a guy by the name of David Orr. And those of you that aren't familiar, and for some of your listeners are listening into this, is that David at the time wasn't working with guys like Justin Rose, Hunter Mahan, Paul Casey, Cheyenne Woods, Suzanne Pedersen, or any of those players at the time, but he was working with someone like Matt Davidson, who was, at the time was not a Corn Ferry Tour, but a nationwide tour. And I was like, okay, he's working with some guys. Why not go under this guy, keep my dream alive, teach myself? And that was the plan. Through that process, I fell in love with teaching the game. And, what David did there with all the putting research and everything, what was funny, just side note real fast on that side of the game, what he did in the player development model, it basically became the model for all PGA schools nationwide. And a large part of it was because of his putting research, but also his short game expertise. And it also led to him, getting connected with Sean Foley, a lot of these big name players coming in. So I go from here, open my own golf school, Watson School of Golf. And through this process, I'm still struggling with teaching players the mental side of the game. And what was crazy about all that is I'm still struggling with this part, and we're getting some success with the technique side of things, but the mental side, players were struggling big time, and I couldn't even teach it myself. And it wasn't until I met this guy, Shannon, that's sitting over here beside me, that things really started to change. And it was mainly because of his story, sharing with all of his success, that I was sitting there going like, oh my goodness, you mean to tell me you're getting all of your speed skaters into the zone at a flip of a switch? Like, and he's showing me text message after text message, and we'll go into the story in a little bit, but I'm sitting there like, you got to be kidding me. Because I read all the books out there on the mental side of the game, Bob Rotella, Zen Golf,
right.
Vision 54, right? And they all talk about what the zone looks like. but they never show you a step-by-step process on how to get there.
And interesting that you ended up teaming up with Shannon, like really moving outside of golf. But still, I mean, they're still sports. But Shannon, tell us a little bit about that from your side of the equation.
Yeah. So my background, I played semi-pro soccer in college as well, and then got into speed skating. I was a late bloomer. But with me, so and a little bit about my background as far as like I've had 6 world champions that I've worked with. I've had 18 world team members. And the 6 world champions, they were numerous world champions. It wasn't just that, but like 147 national champions as well. Numerous national records and stuff like that. But I really realized, we've always the coined phrase, that when it comes to performance and stuff like that, that it's 10% physical and 90% mental. And, as we know, because we're human, that fluctuates depending on who the person is. You might be Tiger Woods. So you, for example, he may not be as mental as somebody else so that mental game can actually be even higher than 90%, 95%. You think about it, you've got, let's say one of the NBA guys, let's say you got 2 seconds left in the game and the other team's up by 1. Mm-hmm. It's just a free throw, and basically what comes down to is the pressure that you put on yourself, in that very moment, even though you've done this 1,000, 1,000,000 times before that, right?
Yep.
It's the same thing. And so that's one thing that I've noticed, like with, when I say stumbled across this, I've done a lot of research and stuff like this. And then I realized, hey, it's stuff that we've learned in Psychology 101, so to speak. But as far as like, with my struggle, I played soccer. I was pretty fast. And so the guys that I skated against, we actually had a very strong team. We had 22 national champions just on our team and their perspective age groups. Right.
Right.
And so we're doing starts and stuff like that with skates on. And I say that because I would always get last off the line. But yet, when we would put shoes on, I'm beating everybody hands down like it's nothing.
So what was the difference there? Right.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, what's going on? How come it's not transferring to the game? And and that's one thing. Like with Bo and I, one thing that we work on is we pretty much, in a sense, guarantee that what you're practicing on the golf range is going to transfer to the course.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. And that's one thing that I did was I figured this thing out. It's like, hey, why are we spending 100% of our time on only basically 25 to 10% of the game, depending on who you are? You know what I mean? Why not, spend some time doing like mental training and stuff like that? And so that's when I started really digging in deep, and I noticed a huge change in my the sporting and stuff like that. I went through. That's the thing. I was a national champion myself, and so it was one of those things where I had to work to. And the only reason why I was national champion was because of the mental part. Seriously, because that's what it came down to. I came down to being like an average Joe or whatever with skates on, right? And then doing these mental reps and these trainings and stuff, that set me up. I noticed that I started beating that one person in practice that I've never beat before.
Right.
Now I started beating another person in practice, and then that started transferring to the meets and then at nationals and everything like that. And with this, I ended up being undefeated for 1 year, and then I got out of it and started getting into coaching, and just because I would rather, I'm motivated by the results that they have.
Yeah. And that just, it speaks volumes because the proof is there. You didn't, even in this instance, you're not changing anything with your physical practice. You're changing something with the mental game, and then the result is there. But as you're talking, I'm listening, and it's hitting a lot of boxes of a lot of stuff that obviously as golfers, we all go through. One being, as you said, the kind of cliche thing that we all say about the game being 90% mental. Yet, if you dive into our practice, very few of us really work on the mental game. Additionally, it's not often that you see coaches talking about it a lot. I mean, you can go on YouTube and I'll find 100,000 videos of how to change your swing, but we don't talk about the mental game. So I want to talk about that, but also this specific thing with the zone, because I feel like my relationship to the zone, whether it be myself or as I'm watching sports and others talking about it, it almost gets this feeling like it's something that just happens to you. Like you're just fortunate in that moment. Be like, I don't know, I was in the zone, but you don't know when it's coming or when it's going. You just kind of enjoy it for the 2 or 3 holes that it lasts. But here, what you guys are talking about is that you're actually switching over and making it a more active thing where you are putting yourself in the zone. So whoever wants to take that, I want to have you elaborate a little bit more about what that means and how your program is helping people kind of make that switch.
Right. So it comes down to it, like I said earlier, like when I was in college, everybody that's went through college, you've basically taken psychology 101. It's one of your electives. You have to take it. And so one of the things that I learned was we've heard about Pavlov's dogs.
Yes.
For example.
Salivating, right.
Yeah, exactly. The light comes on, they salivate. The light comes on, the food drops out, and then they salivate. The light comes on, the food drops out, and stuff like that. But then as the study goes on, they stopped dropping the food out, and they started saying that the dogs had been conditioned to get into it. Mm-hmm. And so that's what it is there are certain triggers that you can trigger your body to get into the zone, but you have to condition it to be able to get in there. Yeah. And one of the little ways that we can condition it is through mental imagery, doing visualization, mental reps. You look at all the studies that's been out there. I mean, it helps in so many different ways. Like for example, the feedback that goes through, like when you get really good at mental imagery, what happens is it's working with the motor century of your brain. Okay, though you're not physically moving, your muscles are actually firing. Mm. And then you can get to the point where, you start feeling twitches in your muscles. That's the only way I know how to describe what I'm talking about is that aspect of it. We were working with one of the ladies that was on the LPGA tour, and one of the things that she had mentioned was that her wrist started hurting when she was doing her mental imagery, and I was about to come unglued. You're just proving what we've been saying the whole time, and then she grasped it, and then obviously, she went on with it. So, I mean, even then it can help mental imagery. There's been case studies too, that actually help with rehab and stuff. And that kind of went with, what was going on with her. And so she was actually getting that reaction, that conditioned response to that. But it also creates muscle memory too. So that's the awesome thing about mental imagery. Think about all the times that you could save necessarily going out to the golf range.
Yeah. You're laying there in bed and you're putting the real reps in, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you got people like Tony Gonzalez, who is in the NFL Hall of Fame. You got I do know that Tiger Woods does his visualization as well. But then you got a lot of people don't know this. Michael Jordan, he did it all the time. Matter of fact, one of the things that he has said was he has actually done more mental imagery of the shots that he's ever even taken when he was on the court or off the court. Wow. Doing practice. He said he's done more shots in his head over and over again. Mm-hmm. Michael Phelps was a genius at it. His coach would talk about, matter of fact, I remember a time where Michael Phelps was explaining that his coach came up to him and took his goggles off, laid him on the ground, and stepped on one side and broke the goggle and gave it back to him and told him, you need to race your race now. Now, it wasn't a big race,
right?
But he did that. But the interesting fact was, Michael Phelps said, what's interesting was the night before he was doing mental imagery of that same thing, and it came to pass. Now, I'm not saying that it comes to pass, but what I mean is you can prepare yourself for whatever happens. Like, for example, let's say, let's say you are 150 yards out.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yep.
And what I'm saying, when you're doing your mental imagery, we can do all these different things, 150 yards out from the pin. You can come up with all these different scenarios that you can do in mental imagery that you're not necessarily going to be able to do out on the course, and you're not going to be able to do it. Like, for example, there's a 10-mile-an-hour headwind.
Right. Yeah, you can't change the wind. So
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
right.
But mentally, you can prepare yourself. Okay, I might need to go one club up, or so on and so forth.
Right.
But you're doing that practice. You can see it, and then making that mental imagery real. Like, for example, what is the sound that the ball makes when you tee off versus the sound the ball makes when you putt?
Right. So that's how you super kind of dial it in granularly by getting down to that fine level of detail, even going down to the sound. Is that what helps the brain kind of really lock it in and retain it as a more of a reality, getting very detailed like that? So
many things. Matter of fact, Ed Milet actually said this, and he had mentioned it, and it's the same thing. He's worked with a lot of professional athletes as well, but it's talking the amount of attention to detail that the pro athletes that they do when it comes to their mental imagery is definitely what helps. But see, here's the awesome thing too, is when you're doing that, you are preparing your body to go in to that motion. For example, like, let's say, here's a great example. There's a guy named Colonel Hall who was in the Vietnam War, and his plane got shot down and was in prison for over 7 years. But he was an avid golfer before he went in. And so one of the things that he would do is he would practice, believe it or not, at Pebble Beach, doing his mental imagery, going through, doing the scoring and everything like that. And he comes out. So then he did that for like 7 years. He couldn't play golf. So more than likely, depending on however long it took him to get into there, he may not have played golf in like 8 years. And then when he gets out and gets freed, he comes out, and literally within I want to say 3 to 4 months of him getting out, he was invited to go play at a tournament at Pebble Beach, and he shot a 76.
He was ready to go after all those reps. Yeah.
So, but then the people
awesome.
were like, and so then they interviewed him. They're like, how in the world, did you do this? Is this beginner's luck? And he was like, you know what? For the past 7 years, I never 3-putted.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
That's
like
wild.
He nailed it.
Yeah.
He nailed it. But see, he triggered it too, because one of his triggers was he would actually, when he was doing his mental imagery, he would hold the club in his hand like this. I mean, obviously you can't hold it, but he would actually, swing the club, and so, but yeah, and then he's at one of the world's toughest, so to speak, golf courses, and he's shooting a 76, and he hadn't played in 7-8 years. That's incredible.
That is absolutely incredible. And let me ask this: I'm seeing already, and I want to dive into it more in a second, but I'm seeing obviously where we're driving at is how if you intentionally can harness this, it's going to lead to better scores. Do you find though that golfers in general are almost doing this to themselves, not knowing it, but in a negative way? And the reason I ask that is because I feel like as golfers, we tend to lament and relive the bad shots. It just, we maybe don't want to, but plenty of us have lost sleep at night thinking about that same 3-putt that missed, we lost the club championship because of a 3-putt. Or I'll give you a perfect example of a funny one that took even me by surprise. I was recently in an MRI machine because I had some neck issues, and I'm trying to be anywhere but this machine because, if you've ever been in one of those machines, it's not a place you want to be. So I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to visualize and just put myself on the golf course and play golf. Right. Well, I get up to the first tee shot, and as you can possibly imagine, I pull hooked it into the woods on the left. And now I'm like, even in my visualization, I still put, and I know I do this on that hole every time I play it. So I'm wondering, obviously we want to switch gears and take advantage of this and do it the right way. But is it possible that we could be even not knowingly doing this the wrong way by kind of getting into the same mental patterns and thinking, I always hit it here. And then what do you know? You hit it there on that
Absolutely.
hole. Is that something that's happening out there?
Oh, it's a huge thing. Matter of fact, a lot of people don't know this, but the U.S. is a huge pioneer in the Olympics, especially in the winter sports. When it comes to, matter of fact, when the Sochi Olympics, they actually had 9 mental coaches go with their teams to Sochi. Okay. And then I read an article that was done, I believe it was on the New York Times, that a guy was going through and talking to all these different people. I mean, you've seen them doing their mental imagery. For example, the slalom skiers, they're up there doing, they're going back and forth and, with their bodies, moving back and forth and everything like that. But here's the thing. They interviewed this lady who was one of the downhill skiers that in the Alpine event. And she said that very same thing, that she kept seeing herself when she was doing her mental imagery falling in this specific turn. Mm-hmm. And she kept seeing herself doing it over and over and over again. And sure enough, what happened was it was a self-fulfilling prophecy, so to speak, because what happens is, I firmly believe that confidence breeds success, because if you're not confident, what's going to be going on? For example, how are you going to hold the club if you're not confident?
Right.
You might be holding it a lot looser. You might have that little nervous twitch or whatever. How is that going to get down to the ball, for example? So what happens is with her, she's coming down this thing, and sure enough, you can see it. It's on video, whatever. She falls and she actually gets knocked unconscious and then comes out of it. But see, the biggest thing when it comes to, there's like 4 stages of mental imagery. Okay. The very first stage is you have to have a plan when you go through it. Don't just, it's kind of like, I'm also an avid cyclist. I race bikes and stuff like that. Like, I don't want to go out and do junk miles. It's like when it comes to training, I don't want to do junk training. I want to have a purpose with it. So when it comes to mental imagery, 4 stages is, 1, you got to have a plan, the very first thing. The other one is you got to have sensory awareness, like what we talked about earlier about your environment, and then the vividness part of it. How vivid is it? How sharp are the colors? Mm-hmm. The smell of the grass, just what cut. But the 4th one is exactly what we're talking about now, and that's called control. You've got to be able to control what you're going through. You can change it, because it's a negative thing. And see, here's the other thing too, is exactly like what you talked about just a second ago. You come up to that dreaded hole. Yeah. Well, you've already created a pattern in your mind that you're going to fail. Right. And so what happens is when you get out on the golf course, you're actually, your body and mind, you're thinking about that hole, the very next one that you're going to, you're already conditioning your body for failure, because you've seen it happen before. And so it's kind of conditioned, but then you got to break it out of that. What I call the expectation trap is because you're expecting to fail versus expecting to succeed. And I like to use it like this. You have 2 voices in your head. You have the inner critic, and then you have the inner coach. Mm-hmm. And so you're listening to the inner critic. But what happens is that is what the thought process comes in, is through that inner critic. Then you have to switch and change gears by doing one thing, mental imagery, a trigger and stuff like that, to reset, to get back to thinking. But also personal self-talk does wonders too. Can actually, because there's a lot of studies that's done biofeedback where your body can start reacting.
Yeah. And like I said, so much of this you're saying is ringing true as a golfer. And I'm sure a lot of the people who are listening, same type of thing. It rings very true. I mean, even the similarities to the way we practice our physical game, where, as you said, these like wasted reps, a lot of us go to the range and we're not even thinking, we're just kind of hitting. There's no focus to it. But also it makes me think of the idea that a lot of times golfers lament about the idea that they feel like each year they take a couple of swing lessons, they play more, but they're not getting better. Or we look at golfers on the whole and we say how across the board golfers are, even with all of the new instruction stuff that's out there, physical instruction, we're not seeing them get any better on the overall when it comes to like something like handicap. Now, what I would like you to tell us a little bit more about, because this really sparks my interest here, is you had a beta launch of your program, 131 golfers, and you saw 5.1 strokes dropped for every golfer who completed it in 45 days. So first of all, the idea of dropping that many strokes in 45 days doing anything to me is like amazing. But is there a component of that like with us as golfers, we're kind of just holding ourselves in this kind of hold pattern of the same thing over and over, and it's a mental switch that we're not unlocking? Is that kind of what you think is a big part of that?
Yes. Let me share my story on that really quick, because when Shannon and I went to dinner last summer and he was sharing his success, and he and I would go to church together, and it was funny because I did not know any of this stuff in his background. And so when he was sharing all this stuff to me, he was showing me text message after text message of all of his speed skaters saying the exact same thing, right? And so I'm going through this, and I'm like, okay. And he shared with me the Pavlov dog study, and then he shared with me how he can trigger a response, right? And I was like, okay, you know what, Shannon? I'm, like I shared earlier, I'm one of the worst in the world at, being my own worst enemy on the golf course. I'm going to put you to the test, because if this works, this is going to change the game of golf overnight. And so I set out last year. I did not play a single round, or I did not practice a single time last year. I played every round that I played last year, 8 rounds, all cold turkey. 6 out of the 8 rounds, I go under par. My last round in late October, I was playing 9 holes, shot 4 under, and I lipped out 3 birdies. And it was after that specific round. Yeah, I mean, I looked at that and I'm like, we got our hands on something here.
Yeah.
Because this worked, because I didn't practice at all. I didn't go out there and do what all the other golfers are doing. I call golf like the worst practice sport in the world. Why? Because, if you play all these other sports that we played growing up, soccer, baseball, basketball, we were spending 80% of our time scrimmaging, like in-game situations. What are we doing in golf? We're practicing from the same lie every single time, and we know that's not going to be the case out on the course. And so, I mean, that's part of it, but a big part of it is, Shannon has a saying, our worst enemy is the person that looks back at us in the mirror every single day that we wake up. And, when you understand how you can trick your body into the zone, and you understand how to do the mental imagery that Shannon talked about, and you can put in the mental reps, then some amazing things will happen. That's all I did. We have a story about, another player, Dell. As soon as I went through that, I started sharing it with my students. Mm-hmm. And Dell is really interesting, because most people think I got to have my swing perfect before I can do mental imagery. We're like, no, you do not. Because here's the thing. Dell came to me last year in my personal school. He struggled. He was a lifelong slicer of the game. And he had this big banana slice off the tee for about, 25, 30 yards, right? Mm-hmm. And we worked together about 2 or 3 sessions. And then because he works at the post office, he's working 70, 80 hours. Well, we know Christmas season, it gets really busy. So we didn't see each other through end of November, December. We kind of texted back and forth. I didn't see him until March. So he shows up on the tee in March, and guess what he starts doing? First 5 shots in his warm-up, draw. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, Dell, what happened? We've been texting. You said you only played 1 time in January, and you practiced 1 time in February. How are you now starting to hit all these draws? And he said, Bo, I took what you told me, what I need to do technique-wise, but then I took what you showed me with the mental imagery, mm-hmm. and I saw myself every chance I had doing the motions and feeling myself doing the motions. And he said, that's all I did. Wow. And so, amazing. And we got many, many more of those stories. Like the person that Shannon shared, I'll share her name. She came out on Instagram and posted a testimonial for us. So one of the tour players we work with, Sandra Gal. And the amazing thing about Sandra, when we first met her in the beginning of July, she wasn't sure or convinced to actually go and sign up for the Scottish and British Open. So due to her injury with her wrist, she had a medical exemption. She only had 5 events for this year. And she, at the time, wasn't comfortable competing again because she had not been able to practice or play. And so when we met her in July, she was intrigued by this because she's not able to practice as much as her colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
And she came on board. We started working with her one-on-one. And then after 2 weeks of doing that, she's like, you know what, I want to do this. And she signed up for the Scottish. On the first round of the Scottish, she was on the leaderboard, sitting in a tie for third place.
Wow.
And she hasn't played in over a year at that point.
Which in and of itself has got to be a huge, confidence, knock, because these guys, I mean, they go out there, the confidence is in knowing that they put the reps in. There's some, elite tour level golfers who don't feel like they'll play well if they haven't played in just the event before it, leading up to it, because they feel like they get out of their form that quickly. So again, I think that that's something that's going to speak to a lot of not only professional golfers like Sandra, but amateur golfers too, because we are limited in how much physical out on the course, FaceTime, so to speak, practice we can get. So tell me about the program itself. Is it 45 days or how do you kind of structure it? How do you start to bring someone through first understanding how to do the visualization, how to do it properly, and then how to kind of use it to their advantage?
Yeah. So basically we have 4 modules. So when we did this as a beta launch, we did it over 4 weeks where we did 4 weeks of live trainings. And so we recorded every session and we compiled it into a actual program. So technically, they could probably do this in 30 days. One of our students was Lauren Matthews, an amazing story. This guy was 79 years old, shot 69.72 after the first week.
Yeah, you got to love it when you beat your age, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And here's the thing: he found my number at my own personal golf school, and he calls me, he leaves me a voicemail, and he said, "Bo, I got to tell you," he said, "I've been playing this game for many years. The last time I shot in the 60s was when I was a kid."
Wow. So, and that's after just a few weeks, huh?
That was after the first week.
First week, wow.
So the first week is you're coming in, you're understanding how to do mental imagery. We walk you through how to go through the vividness test that we talk about. One of the things and the biggest complaints I've seen with a lot of other programs, and like I said, I've read all the books, I've been through a lot of different programs, they're all great, and I'm not knocking any of them because there's a lot of great information out there. But the thing is, one of the things I saw that was I guess you would say something that was lacking was how can you actually measure someone getting better in the mental side of the game? We actually can do that. We have a test that we take in the beginning, and we can also take a test later that will actually show improvement in the vividness part of things. So that's week 1. Week 2, we actually show you the trigger. So the thing that Shannon talked about earlier with Pavlov's dogs, that trigger that comes in, but we actually have a trigger that activates you into the zone. Now, we could spend the next 2 hours going over this, but we wouldn't have enough time to really go through all those things. But we find the trigger that actually specifically fits you as a golfer. And so we cover that in module 2.
So that's a very individual thing. That's not just you. When you say you don't mean you as all golfers. You mean you as the individual golfer.
Correct.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So week 3, it's all about the routines. When you had to go watch a really good tour player, and I love practice round days on like a Monday or a Tuesday. But if you were to watch someone that's really good at this, you could sit there with a stopwatch and time from the start of the routine and the end of the routine, and it's within 1 second. And so we actually show you how to develop a bulletproof routine that will actually prevent the distractions and noise and all that stuff from coming in and interfering. So that way you're actually in the zone, and you're in the zone through the entire process of being in your routine. So that's the other big thing with module 3. Module 4 is some cool stuff that Shannon shared with your nutrition, sleep, things like that. But I also share for golfers that struggle with putting. If you know my background, I was blessed to learn under David Orr. Right now he's considered probably the world's renowned putting expert. And one of the stories I share in that is of Charlie Wee. Charlie Wee is a PGA Tour player back at a time when him and David met at 2007. At the time when David tested him, he was ranked 123rd in putting. But on the Sam Putt Lab, this guy was ranked 95% across all 4 categories. But guess who also was in that database? Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods at the time was still ranked top 3 in putting. But we also had 30 other tour players that were included in that database. But Charlie was ranked the best when it comes to technique, so to speak.
So right? Why was the technique not translating on the course? Right.
Exactly. And so David worked with him, and those two major things I remember were the takeaways for Charlie. One, the belief in himself that he was a great putter, and thankfully he had a Sam Putt lab to prove that part. He's like, look, you got Tiger just right here. You're better than him with your stroke profile, right? But he also had to work with him on the putting skills. And, the 4 putting skills were speed, read, aim, starting your ball, and your intended line. So over the course of a year, Charlie in the summer of 2008 was ranked number 3 in total putting.
Wow. In one season to jump.
Yeah.
Wow.
You don't see that on the PGA Tour.
You don't. Right.
Yeah, you don't, because that's the biggest difference is like when you talk about your MRI. There's people that when it comes to performance, it's based off of your right brain, and then when it comes to I want to say your left brain, that is more technical, your technical aspect. And so when you really start focusing on your technical aspect of the game, while you're actually going through and playing your round, it'll actually sabotage your game because you're on the left side versus the right side. Things like, are you still considering the details of your shot while you're moving into the shot over the ball? Or do you change the shot or target while you're over the ball? Mm-hmm. Little things like that. There's little fluctuations, and you start thinking, oh man, I got to have my hip, my shoulders here. I learned this and all that. Then what's going to happen is it's going to sabotage that shot, and it happens. We see it over and over again.
Right. Because the golf swing is still very complex. It all happens so quickly. It doesn't take much of a mental hiccup to make that go pretty darn wrong. All right. So, I mean, like I said, it's super interesting stuff. First of all, I think it's exciting that you guys are putting such a strong focus on the mental side. I'm right with you of saying that it's very underserved. We've had some great mental coaches here on the podcast. We talked to Dr. Joseph Parent just a couple of weeks ago. So I think that it's something that is starting to get the attention it really deserves, but still has a long way to go. But it's certainly got my interest. So tell us a little bit more about how our listeners can follow up on this, find out more, and if it's something that, as you said, the 4 modules that you described, if that's something that they're interested in pursuing, how would they go about finding out more and doing that?
Yeah, luckily for them, they can actually attend a free training that will be going on every second Thursday. So we try to do 2 weeks out of the month where we do a free training, and they can actually go to the endzonementaltraining.com/Golficity, and they can go there to register, and then they'll be able to watch that free training that we're going to go through and do a more in-depth overview of how the system works, and then give them the meat and things like that where they can immediately go and apply this. We actually were just on a call just earlier today, and what was amazing, we were following up on some of the listeners from last week's training that we did, and one of the girls is actually on the ladies European tour, and she had been struggling a little bit, and she went and watched a free training, and the very next day she shot 1 under par, and she had not shot under par in probably a couple months.
Wow. It's just like I said, the results are tremendous. One thing, let me ask you this too, because it's just what I've got an idea of what the answer is going to be, but I want to make sure, because we've talked so much about a lot of better golfers who are maybe just kind of holding themselves back, and then by using this approach, they kind of unlocked it. But if someone is a little bit more skeptical and they're listening and they're saying, well, I'm just not confident, I don't have that ability. No matter what, I'm a 20 handicapper. I'm not ready for this. Like I wasn't once shooting in the 60s and now I just need to get back there. What do you say to someone like that? Is this a program that they would benefit from as well?
Absolutely. So what I'll say is I'll give you a real brief thing that happened. I coached a speed skater. He was 11 years old. And the very first meet that he went to, I will say this, in speed skating, practice is totally abnormal to any other sport, meaning we would actually have skaters from other teams come down and skate our practices, right? And so all the little boys that were his age that was coming from other teams, we'd have like 2 or 3, he would always beat them in practice. Mm-hmm. But then when he came to his very first meet, he was just so nervous and so just out of from himself, obviously not himself when he was skating. He actually got beat, didn't even make it to the finals in some races. And in the long race, he got almost lapped. And so then everybody's saying, well, he's too nervous to do it. He can't, what's going on. He's not even trying. The things that we hear that we don't understand what's going on the mental side.
Mm-hmm.
But so long story short, I actually met with him and his parents, explained to him how to do it and everything, the mental imagery, the trigger, everything like that. Within 2 months, he won his first invitational, and then he ended up placing at nationals that year.
Wow.
And he's only 11 years old.
Right.
Now, there's also another girl that we've been working with. She's 11 now. She just turned 12. She actually dropped 10 strokes off her game. And here's my thing is, if an 11-year-old and a 12-year-old can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say too, if no matter how new or whatever a golfer is, I feel like every golfer has it where they've hit that one shot that felt good. You did it. Right. And my idea is then, okay, if you've done it, it shows the physical body can do it. So why aren't you doing it more? I even asked that question of myself. Sometimes I hit a shot, close to a pin that I'm like, wow, I even surprised myself. But then I try to think back on it later and say, well, that was proof. That was proof that it can be done. So what is the reason I don't do that every time? And it's got to be the only thing I could think. I'm not changing my body. It's the same body. It's the same, fueled the same way, all those other things. It's my mind. So I would think that might be a part of a reason too why any level golfer is going to benefit from working on their mental game rather than waiting till they're a good golfer and then use the mental game as that final step to unlock eliteness. Use it at any point. Do you agree with me there?
100%. If you remember the story I shared about Dell,
Yeah.
Dell, he went from a lifelong slicer, and now he's hitting draws. But the other
True,
thing,
right.
score-wise, he went from, he was shooting high 80s, low 90s. Now he is down into about 78 to 83 is where his scoring range is now.
Wow. Yeah, and there you go. That's something that's super relatable for a lot of golfers out there. All right. Well, guys, listen. Appreciate you coming on the show today. Appreciate you taking the time to talk a little bit about this. Like I said, it definitely has my interest peaked. So we'll for sure we'll link to that in the show notes as well, so that if anyone missed the link earlier, we'll make sure that's there and they can check out some of your free trainings. I mean, why not? But we appreciate both of you coming on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Guys, I would have spoke a little.
Thanks.
I would have spoke a little more, but Frank was in the interview
I was in the
zone, so I didn't want to ruin it. He was flowing.
That's
But
it.
thank you guys. We really appreciate the insight.
That was good example. I was right in the zone there.
It
All
was.
right. All right, guys. Again, been great chatting with you. We appreciate the time and best of luck with the program as you roll it out of beta and start to really get this thing rolling. I like I said, I've definitely have high hopes for what you're doing. And I commend, the attention that you're bringing to the mental game. It's really terrific stuff.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Frank.
Thanks again.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, guys. You
Take
got it.
care. All right. I told you it'd be interesting stuff, right?
Yeah, so interesting.
I love the mental game.
I know.
I mean, I really kind of, and I'm sorry, I know I did a lot of talking there.
That's fine. man.
But
You
I
were in the
geek
zone. I
out
said it.
over this stuff. All right. And I love doing, like I said, when we had Dr. Joseph Parent on and stuff like just getting into the mental side of the game, because it also excites me because it's something that I feel like, okay, I can put some real work in on my golf game when I don't always, we've got jobs, we've got young kids and stuff like that. I don't always have time to go down to the range and grind it out for an hour or two.
Right.
So the idea of, especially the examples that they shared of these long periods where people weren't able to do the type of practice in the conventional practice we're used to seeing, and instead were able to really work on their game in the mental aspect, I thought it was interesting. Plus, Mike, how much do we see it now, like visually on PGA Tour? I'm thinking
lot.
Jason Day, right? And even Jason Day has made a resurgence and starting to play well again. And he went back to just closing his eyes when he does his visualization.
Yeah.
I know he had gotten away from that. He had struggled a little bit. I know he has other issues too with injury, but still, I think it's an exciting thing that all of us golfers, and when you hear things like how quickly these changes are made, these improvements, in a week, and this guy's shooting his lowest scores in 50 years. If that doesn't make your mouth water a little bit as a golfer, nothing will.
Oh, of course. And, talking back on Jason Day and some of us may be sitting, guys, I could sit there, close my eyes on a tee box and try to visualize the most beautiful touch shot in the world. But I'll tell you 10 times out of 10, I'm not hitting that shot. I'm just not that good. Well, if anything, that 5 seconds of closing your eyes and visualization, if anything, will at least calm you down and be a part of your pre-shot routine. So I'd say at least try it at first and see if anything it gives you that little bit of 3-second calmness before you step up to a golf ball.
Right. Or what we said earlier, like even if it's not going to immediately make you Tiger Woods, it's going to help you get out of your own way. I mean, just even the realization, even if you don't do the, or follow through, like checking out their training program, even if you take one thing away from this, just maybe think about how much am I, instead of using this as a way to propel myself forward, how much am I even holding myself back? Just becoming aware of your own mental thinking. How many times is it that I am visualizing a bad shot because I'm expecting it? How many times do I get into a rhythm where I'm constantly, say, missing putts, and now I'm just thinking I'm going to miss the putt? Just by being aware of that might be able to at least pump the brakes a little bit on any of your mental talk that's slowing you down.
Right.
And then when you're ready to even take it to the next level, now, that's why I thought it was interesting. So many people at that elite level, which is just not quite performing the way they want to do. And they just use this idea and this system to unlock it. Is an interesting further step.
And I think it's funny that Frank still shanks balls in his fantasies. So if you guys are struggling with your golf game, this guy's still shanking them while he's daydreaming.
Even when he's daydreaming in an MRI machine, he's got a pull hook into the left woods.
I love it.
But now I know.
Now he knows.
I can change that. And he said control was the thing, right? Take it, control it, shift the thought, and I'm going to try. Can't wait till I play that hole again in real life. Because I'm going to see if I visualize something completely different.
Where are you right now? West Hills number 1?
I was West Hills number 1.
Yeah.
Right?
You go left into the woods.
If I'm going to try to visualize completely different and see if it makes that big difference for me.
We'll see.
Yes. All right, guys, that's everything we have. Make sure you go to the show notes. You can get, like I said, the links are in the video description. Also in the free Golficity app, which you can get for Android and iOS. All of the links and everything will be there. Again, big thanks to both Bo and Shannon for coming on the show. Like I said, very enlightening. If you guys also found it enlightening, let us know what you think. Drop a comment. Leave us a message in the Facebook group. We'd love to hear more from you guys, and we'll see everybody again next week.